All right, everybody. Hello. Welcome to Joist AI's first of many monthly enablement series. This is going to be part of our larger educational program, our Joist AI Learning Loft. So thank you. The whole point of this enablement series is to continue to make sure that we are giving you the education that you need for success, not just with Joist AI, but with AI education in general, to make sure that you have the tools and enablement that you need to feel confident with AI, but then also to continue to grow your careers. So with that said, just like today, we will be inviting special guests within the industry, within the AI world, to provide this education. And without further ado, today's first kickoff of this enablement series is special guest Christopher Penn. Many of you probably recognize Christopher. He is in our AEC AI circle. Some of you have probably seen him speak before, have been on other webinars. As you guys know, he's a very talented and talented expert individual within this space. So we hope you enjoy today. And without further ado, Christopher, I'll let you talk a little bit more about yourself and your background, and we'll get started. So thank you, everybody, for joining. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Amanda. And thank you, Amanda and Rohan and Hiroko and Haley and the entire Joist AI team for having me. I really enjoy talking with our AEC colleagues. And this is the first of two talks we're going to be doing. This one today, we're going to be covering a lot of the basics, general best practices for using generative AI. And then in the next one, we're going to talk about the AEC specific use cases. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. As a reminder, this is a Zoom webinar, so you are more than welcome to use the chat, use the Q&A for questions that you have, and we will answer as many questions as possible. I'm going to try to do like 35 to 40 minutes worth of yapping, and then after that, let you get your questions in. So let's get started. If it feels like things are moving fast, it's because they are. Every generation that has come before us has had a lot of time to adapt. When you look at the history, and you look at something like agriculture, agriculture used to be like 60% of our economy, and it has winnowed down to like 5%, even though we're feeding more people than ever. But that happened over generations, right? You did things a certain way. Your kids did things a different way. Their kids did things a different way. And no one had to retrain. 150 years is the amount of time that people had to adapt to change in the past. Generative AI is changing so quickly that it's more like 150 weeks, which is about how long it's been. ChatGPT first came out in November of 2022. Which is a little more than 2.5 years later. That's a mind-boggling thing to think about it. 2 years ago, summer of 2023, we were just figuring out that this thing even existed, and here we are, summer of 2025. It is absolutely astonishing. Why do we care about this stuff? Because it's getting so capable. As marketers, as AEC marketers, as marketers in general, we are already seeing massive impacts. Gartner made this prediction about 2 months ago, saying by 2028, brands' organic search traffic will decrease by 50% or more as consumers embrace generative AI-powered search. Gartner was off by about 3 years. It is about 34% is the impact today. Today. It is not 3 years away from now. It is right now. And that share is going to get eroding even faster. Google said at was it IO, their IO conference about a month ago, they expect 10% growth in AI overviews and AI summaries that intercept the consumer, but month over month this year. They expect by the end of the year, 50% of all search queries will be AI enabled, AI enhanced, or replaced by AI entirely. This is going to have impacts on employment. And we'll talk about that in future talks, but the Tony Blair Institute estimated for the UK that approximately 5 to 10% of their workforce would be out of work as AI hits its peaks. We all saw last month Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei say the amount of structural employment is likely to be between 10 and 20%. So this is going to have impacts on knowledge work jobs across professions. These tools are very capable in education. Students, this is a study that came out from, I think it was MIT about a month ago. Students learn more than twice as much in less time with an AI tutor compared to an active learning classroom, while also being more engaged and motivated. So AI is a better teacher than humans are. In law firms, productivity going up 34 to 140% across tasks, especially difficult tasks. And you have probably already started to see this in some degree in your firm, regardless of the firm type, regardless of the firm size, as people start to adopt AI. This is a chart of what's called the GPQA Diamond. This is a set of benchmarks that AI models are put through to test how smart they are. You can see here, summer of 2023, GPT-4, which at the time was cutting edge and state of the art, and where it was a lot of people's first impression of AI, was actually kind of a face rolling idiot. It was very, very non fluent in answering difficult questions. And over time, if we look, as of this spring, Google's Gemini 2.5 is now in this set of very difficult questions, answering above human PhD level. Think about that, what that means in 2 years, going from face rolling moron to beyond a PhD. That's how fast the tools are evolving. And they're evolving at a pace of doubling capacity approximately every 7 months. What that means is if a generative AI tool can't do something today or can't do it well today, there's a very good chance in 6 or 7 months that it will be able to. We have seen this. You have seen this as tools become very capable software developers, very capable at producing audio and video and all sorts of things. It is astonishing the rate of progress that these tools are making, and that timeline appears to actually be accelerating. So it seems like it's going to be closer to 6 months rather than 7 for the doubling time of its capacity. Interestingly, there's a test called the Turing test. And what this is it's a test of artificial intelligence. It's been around, named after the famous cryptographer and AI person Alan Turing, way back in the 1950s. The Imitation Game, I think, was the name of the movie that was about him. Benedict Cumberbatch played his persona. The Turing test says, if I put you in front of a computer and you have a conversation, if you can successfully tell that you are talking to a human or a machine, then the machine fails. If you can't tell that you're talking to a machine or a human, the machine passes. Today's models are now operating at a win rate of 73%. That means 73% of the time, a human being can't tell whether they're talking to a human or a machine. In terms of fluency and capability, what that means is if we're using these tools for marketing purposes and you're worried that people are going to say, oh, this is machine generated crap. Well, the machines are capable of generating content, conversation that effectively we don't know whether it's a machine or a human. So they are very capable. And this series and all the enablement content from Joist AI is to help you get to that point. Yesterday, I was on the phone with the team looking at the interface within Joist AI. And right in the interface, we built an ideal customer profile from the firm's data, and it was really, really good. That's how capable the underlying models are that companies like Joist build on top of, and the models are only getting smarter. So every day that passes, when you make an investment in a company like Joist and in your own AI tools, your investment gets smarter over time. A lot of investments, capital purchases depreciate over time. When you invest in good AI, it gets better over time. The product gets more valuable rather than less. This is probably the most shocking example of generative AI. This was Chris Pelkey, who was killed in a road rage incident in Chandler, Arizona. And a few months ago, with his family's consent and help, they provided all the training data. An AI firm built a deep fake of him to give an impact statement, a victim impact statement at the sentencing of his killer. And the judge said this is a fantastic example of using these tools to bring someone else's words to life. The whole point of it was for Chris to synthetically speak about his own life values and how he thought the sentencing should go. A very, very interesting use case. So this is sort of where the tools, what their level of capability is today, is that strong. So let's get into some key concepts. There's 3 different kinds of AI. There's what's called regression, classification, and generation. Regression has been around since the 50s, like the 1950s, and it is all about given some data and an outcome. What data that in our what stuff in our data matches the outcome. As a marketer, this is things like attribution analysis, lead scoring, etc. You've used this whether you know it or not. The second category is classification, organizing your data. If you've worked with any kind of CRM, this is all your lead scoring, right? How do I classify good leads from bad leads and things? And the combination of the find and organize AI is what gives rise to generative AI. But it's important to know that there's more than one kind of AI. A lot of the conversation, understandably, today is about generative AI, tools like ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude and Veo and Suno and all these names that sound like either, maybe they're technology companies, they could also be medications or IKEA furniture names. No one's really quite sure. That's only one part of a much bigger universe. And there are use cases, we won't be talking about them in this series, but there are use cases for those more classical forms of AI that are still incredibly valuable. When we're thinking about AI at your firm and for yourself personally, when you want to use this, there are 2 fundamental approaches, 2 strategies. There's optimize and innovate, or optimize and transform. Optimize is, I want to keep doing what I'm doing, but I want to do it bigger, better, faster, cheaper. I want to make things go faster. The time to write an RFP response, I want to go from months down to days. The time I respond to an email going from minutes to seconds. You don't change what you're doing, you change how you do it. And that's what optimization is. And the point of optimization is bigger, better, faster, cheaper. Can I be more productive? I was talking with someone who works at a very large tech company, and they said they've been given a mandate by the end of the year. Every person at a manager level or above needs to be 30% more productive, or they're queued for the next round of layoffs. That's kind of how their management's thinking about things, which is pretty drastic. Another company was saying we need to find X number of hours of work time reduced by an outlandish number by the end of the year using AI. One of the things that expressions I like is, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. So if you're using AI to optimize what you're doing, that's good. It saves you time. It can save you money. It can free up resources. But it doesn't fundamentally change what you do or how you do it. And that's where innovation is. These tools are skill levelers, which means that they give you skills that you don't have. I can't write video games, but with generative AI, I can come up with ideas for video games and have AI write the code in Swift or JavaScript or languages that I don't speak for me. I can take an RFP and turn it into a 3-minute pop song. I can take a RFP response and turn it into a music video. I can do all of these things because I have the ideas, and it would allow me to do something different. If you want long-term value out of AI, you have to start with optimizing to free up time and resources, and then use that savings to invest in innovation. Use that time and money to grow, not to just make profit margins better, but to do something different that other people aren't doing. Otherwise, it's a race to the bottom. Whoever can do a proposal the fastest and the cheapest, that's not really a win. That's not going to differentiate you in the audience. And this is an important concept, particularly for senior leaders at organizations, to understand that you have to invest in innovation using AI. Another core principle is the difference between deterministic and probabilistic. AI tools are probabilistic by nature. There is randomness, right? If you copy and paste the same prompt into Chat GPT twice, start a new chat, paste a prompt in, start another new chat, paste the same prompt in, you will get different results each time. They won't be radically different, right? You type in, let's write a blog post about marketing in the AEC industry in 2025. You will get a thematically similar thing, but it will not ever be exact because these tools are probability based, which means randomness can happen. Deterministic tasks are things like math, right? 2 plus 2 equals 4, always and forever. There is no universe in which, under a base 10 system, 2 plus 2 does not equal 4. Where this is important is because if a task is more rules based than not, AI is going to have a harder time with it. For example, the number one thing that people ask me at every conference and webinar and trade show and workshop is, can AI do my slide deck for me? And the answer is not in the way that you want it, because so much of putting together a PowerPoint deck is deterministic. It's got to have this template and these colors and these fonts and this exact layout. And this is our writing style. And this is how long it can be. And the more rules you put on AI, the worse it performs. You've probably tried all these different tools in Google Slides and Copilot and Microsoft PowerPoint and Gamma and Flux and all these different AI tools that promise to be able to do your slides for you. And none of them ever nail it because it's such a deterministic task that, yes, there is some generation, but the majority of the task is not. And so these tools fail at it. As you think about tasks that are deterministic, know that they will not be as good a fit for generative AI. Like math, these tools can't count. They cannot do math reliably because fundamentally math is not language, and language models do language. If I say 14 plus 15, you know the answer, 29. But if a tool is predicting language, it'll probably predict 16 because 14, 15, 16. Right? That's a logical prediction for the next logical word. It's mathematically wrong. And that is the difference between deterministic and probabilistic. We'll skip past all the technical stuff, but the two major architectures are known as transformers and diffusers. You will hear the term model a lot in generative AI. Model is just fancy for software. It means that it's software written by AI for AI. And the reason this is important is you can't use models directly in AI. You have to use them through an interface like a Chat GPT, like a Google Gemini, like a Claude or a DeepSeek or a Midjourney. And you've probably had the experience if you use a tool like Chat GPT, there's a little model picker up top with the most confusingly named products of all. For example, OpenAI has a model called 4o, which is a really dumb model. They also have a model called O3. And people think, well, O3 must be a worse model because it's one number lower than 4o. But actually, it's the much smarter model because the people who make these models are not marketers. They don't understand how to name a product. I mean, look at these names: O4 Mini High, Quen 3, 235B, A22B. No one. That's like a part number. That's not a consumer product. But as we use these tools, we need to understand the difference between an interface and a model. And as they get more sophisticated, we will probably be asked more and more to pick a model for our uses, which brings me to the two model classes, the kinds of models there are. One is the first thing is called reasoning models, and these are the fancy ones. This is Google's Gemini 2.5. This is OpenAI's O3. This is Anthropic Claude's Sonnet and Opus 4 with the extended thinking turned on. What a reasoning model does is it basically writes a first draft behind the scenes and looks at its results before it gives you an answer. They take longer, but their answers are substantially better. And the second kind of model that you want to look for are multimodal models, especially in AEC. AEC is so visual: building designs, blueprints, floor plans, RFPs, you name it. A model has to be able to see images and videos and PDFs and all these things. And so we want to focus on the models that do those things well. There's like millions of these things out there. And as I said, more and more software is going to ask you to choose a model. This is an example of an advanced automation. And you can see right in the middle there, there's I can change models if I want to change how the automation works. I'm going to give you a caution about AI vendors. There's like 150,000 different AI vendors now. And the caution is this: everyone is putting AI into everything as though it were Nutella, right? And just like, let's put AI in this. And not every task needs AI. Not every task is well suited for AI. We want to avoid the temptation to just buy point solutions. 80 to 90% of every person's tasks you can probably do in a foundation model like Gemini 2.5 Flash or Pro, OpenAI O3, or Anthropic Claude Sonnet 4. These are the three. If you have access to any one of these, the paid versions, this will get you 90% of the way there. You obviously do have some specialized platforms out there that do a very good specific task, like Joist AI that does proposals, right? And the way the team has architected it, you could do it yourself, but it would be a lot more work than having it built in. Um, but for most things, you don't need to buy 80 or 90 pieces of software, pay $25 a month to everybody. One of these three tools will get the job done. And in fact, there are, if you were to look at the pace at which models are getting smarter, let me bring this up here. This is from a website called Artificial Analysis, and you can see over time every model is getting smarter and smarter and smarter. They're all kind of in the same area, which means that if you own and pay for one of these tools, there's a very good chance that you're going to get everything you need that you don't need. And if your favorite tool doesn't have a feature that you hear about in a competitor, it will. It will in 3 to 6 months, because if the feature is good, everyone's going to use it. The example is deep research. Everyone now has this capability. All right. So what are these things? Fundamentally, they're prediction engines, right? They predict the next item in a sequence. You shall know a word that a company keeps. If I say I'm brewing the tea, this is a short sentence in English that means pouring hot water over leaves. Changing a word in one place changes the meaning of the sentence in other places. If I say I'm spilling the tea, now I'm talking about gossip, right? I've changed one word and changed another word, because all language is statistics. All language is probability. If I say I pledge allegiance to the next word, almost 100% probability is flag. It's probably not going to be rutabaga. And so because language has patterns, these tools can predict it. And they predict it because they've been trained on ridiculously large amounts of information. To give you a sense, today's models are trained on 40 to 60 trillion tokens, which is about 20 to 30 trillion words. That is a bookshelf that goes around the planet 8 times at the equator. And that is how much text that a single model has consumed to learn how to do what it does. And when we interact with these things, they're like librarians, but instead of asking for a book and getting a book back, they come back with a new word every single time. We interface with these tools with a set of techniques called prompt engineering. That's the fancy name, right? It really is just giving instructions. And the way it works is, imagine, this is conceptual. This is not mathematically correct, but conceptually, imagine every word has a cloud of words around it, a little word cloud. And as you type a prompt, those little word clouds start intersecting. And over time, where all of those intersections are essentially what the model knows you're asking about. And so if you think about like a newsroom, an editor in chief probably would not go say, "Oh, go write a story about the news." The editor in chief would say, "Let's go write a story about this. You're on this beat. Go and get this information." This being specific. Here's an example. If I say, "What are the best performing marketing strategies for AEC firms in 2025?" I get back boring slop. This is boring. There's nothing original here. Why? I gave it so few words that it's going to return just very high probability answers. If I double the number of words, if I say, what are the best performing marketing strategies for AEC firms in 2025 for firms under 50 employees specializing in industrial design, I get better stuff, but it's still kind of slop, right? It's still kind of boring. And when people say AI can't write, what they're really saying is they don't know how to prompt, because this is a terrible prompt. This sucks, right? There's so little detail. If I say, what are the best performing marketing strategies for this, and I give 4,000 words of information about who our firm is and what our capabilities are and how we do our marketing, now I get answers that are specific to me. And I get really cool ideas for my AEC firm based on giving it so much relevant information. The factory tour ideas and guerrilla outreach, hyper personalized gifts, co-marketing. If you take away nothing else from this entire webinar, from this entire series, it is this: the more specific, relevant words you use, the better your prompts will perform. The more relevant, specific words you use, the better your prompts will perform. Here's how many words you're allowed to use. ChatGPT could take an entire business book, 90,000 words, as a prompt, right? Google's Gemini can take in 800,000 words. The entire collection of William Shakespeare could be a prompt. Now, you shouldn't do that, but it can do that. So anyone who's saying, oh, keep your prompts short, like, for the average user, no, that's the worst possible advice. Make your prompts detailed and highly specific, and you'll get better performance. The framework I recommend is one called RACE. It is what we do at Trust Insights: role, action, context, execution. So I would say, here's the task we're going to do. Pick a role. What role do you think best suits this task? Let me give you a brief overview of the task. We're going to write a blog post about, our AEC firm. I'm going to give lots of information. The more, the better. And then I'm going to ask it to build a work plan and actually come up with a way of accomplishing this work plan. So let's do this. Let me do a quick example here. I'm going to be using Google's Gemini. You do not have to. You can and should use the tool of your choice that makes you happy, or that you pay for. One of the two. But there's no obligation here. So I'm going to say, let's write a blog post about the importance of BIM in AEC: architecture, engineering, and construction, tying it into the value proposition of our firm, Southern Isles AEC. Now, that is not enough, right? I need to provide our company profile. Here is who Southern Isles AEC is. It's a big, huge chunk of information. I'll drop that in, and I'm going to say, for this task, choose a role to accomplish the task. State it aloud. We always want to have models talk and say things. Then come up with a work plan for how you will accomplish the task. State it aloud. Do the task. So I have my role, which is, I'm asking to pick one. I've given it the action, the overview, right in a blog post. I've given it a big, huge block of context about who we are as a company, and I have told it to build its own work plan. This is a reasoning model, and like you see with an OpenAI ChatGPT, it will take some time to do this thinking. This is what a reasoning model does. It thinks through by itself first, and then once it's done, then it comes out with the work plan, and here comes the blog post. Now, I still haven't specified things, and I should, but obviously this is just a demo. Things like my writing style. Like, what is the writing style that would be appropriate for our company? But this structure reminds you of the things that you should be including in every single prompt. When we talk about the role, we're talking about what role AI should pick, because we want it to choose a job title of some kind, because that helps models perform substantially better than if they didn't have that. And the reason why is simple. In the training data, high quality data, it often has, like in someone's biography, like, oh, I'm, so-and-so is the chief AI scientist at Joist AI. When we specify a role, we're invoking associations from the model's knowledge of high quality content. That's why you'll hear people say, make sure it's an award-winning thing, right? A Pulitzer Prize winning author, and so on and so forth. So that was the race prompt. Another prompt structure I use is called Repel: role, action, prime, prompt, evaluate, and learn. This is a more in-depth prompting format. You tell the model who it is. So you choose a role if you know it. I would say you're a Google Analytics certified professional skilled in GA4 and all this stuff. I would give it its overview of the task again. And I would ask it, what do you know about this topic? What are common mistakes? What are expert tips and tricks? And today's AI tools like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini all have access to the web. So they will go and literally Google it to answer these questions, and they will spit this information back. Then you tell it, hey, here's what you're doing. Go do the thing. They have a conversation with it like it was someone on your team and say, this doesn't make sense. What if we do it this way? How can we do this instead? And at the end, you say, let's build instructions for how to do this task again in the future so that we learn from it. And the next time we have to do this task, we come up with you get to the answer faster. You're welcome to download this. No forms to fill out. Nothing. No information to give. Go to trustinsights.ai/rappel, and we will send out the slides from this afterwards as well. Let's talk about the mechanics of prompting, because I want, and this will answer one of the questions in the chat as well from Melody. This is how we think AI chat works. We have we send a prompt, we get a response, and we have another prompt, and we have a response, and we send another prompt, and we get another response, and so on and so forth. And this is how we think AI chat actually works. And because it's how we work as humans. When you have a conversation and you're texting it to people and stuff like that, you're paying attention to what they just said and you're responding to it. That is not how AI works. When you're having a conversation with generative AI in any tool, the entire conversation becomes part of the next prompt. So you have you give a prompt, it gets a response. You give another prompt and it gives another response, but the response is based on everything that you've said. And you keep doing this over and over again, and everything becomes part of the next prompt. So when I say state things aloud in the chat, what we're doing is we're basically loading up the chat with all those relevant specific words so that it becomes part of the next prompt. The entire conversation history becomes part of the next prompt. This is important for a couple reasons. One, it means that you don't have to come up with all the words yourself. That's one of the reasons why the Rappel framework works really well, because you can say, what do you know about this? And when it spits out 2,000 words of information, or when you say choose a role for yourself and say it out loud, it spits out all this information. Now that's 2,000 words I don't have to type in a prompt. Second, AI needs to talk to get better results because of this architecture of every part of the conversation becomes part of the next prompt. The more you let it talk, the faster it zooms in on the answer that you want. So you've got to let it talk, and you want it talking out loud. One of the worst things you can do is say, don't show me any information, just give me the answer. If it's not in the chat, it didn't happen. If it's not in the chat, the machine didn't think about it. You need to see it in the chat, especially when you start working with multimodal stuff. Long ago, when computer vision first came out, there was a case study, a fantastic example where a lab trained an AI model to understand the difference, a classifier between a wolf and a dog. And it worked great in the lab. And when they brought it into production, it failed miserably. Why? When they decomposed the model, they turned out the machine learned to look for whether there was snow in the picture and not whether it was a wolf or a dog. So when we say to AI, state it aloud, tell me what you see, we want to make sure that it's seeing the right things. The other thing this means is that you can't reliably say, oh, forget what I just said, or, oh, that's wrong, or, oh, go back and fix that, because the wrong information is still in the chat. And every time you send that whole prompt through, the wrong information is still in there, and it's still influencing things. So in ChatGPT, if something goes wrong, you can edit your previous response and then say, redo this, and that way the incorrect words are not part of the chat history. In Google's Gemini in AI Studio, you can actually just delete entire things from the chat and just remove them. In general, the longer a chat goes on, the worse AI performs, because it's just so huge, right? And you want to start new chats frequently. Smaller history means it operates faster and it's more precise. Every model and every company, the chats start to lose cohesion. They start to get forgetful. They start to screw up after they get too big. In OpenAI, like I said, 90,000 words, right? If you uploaded a big PDF, you might hit that limit very, very quickly. And then the model has to start deciding where it's going to throw away stuff to keep its memory intact. In Gemini, even though Gemini can hold 1 million words, well, 800,000 words, it can't reliably remember them all. So two important rules. You can't go back and change the past. So you need to start over frequently. And the more often you start over, the faster and more precise it performs. Here's a great way to think about prompting too that will get you better results. Think about how you delegate. If you have a new junior coordinator on your team and say, "Oh, go build me a content marketing plan," what kind of results are you going to get from a junior coordinator or a summer intern? Not very good. You're going to get very generic results. You're going to get stuff that has nothing to do with your company, and you're going to be disappointed and upset. If, on the other hand, you said, "Hey, new person, welcome to the team. Here's a book of who we are. Here's a book of our competitors. Here's how our writing style guide. Here's the last 20 posts that we've written. Here's this. Here's this. Go write me a content marketing strategy." You are going to get much better results because these tools are kind of like the world's smartest, most forgetful interns, right? It's always the first day. They never remember where the bathroom is, but they have a PhD in everything, as we saw from the GPQA result. They have a PhD in everything, but it still can't find the restroom. So as a good manager, you have to delegate to this person over and over and over again. Here's how to do your job. The last thing I want to cover today before we open up for questions is a concept called knowledge blocks. This has a fancier name now among the nerd herd. They call it context engineering, which is even more unnecessarily complicated. But these are pre-baked, built blocks of information that you have. Maybe it's in your SharePoint, maybe it's in your OneDrive, or whatever the case may be. You have this information stored that you can reuse, and you build this stuff so that you can drag and drop it right in. You saw in the example just before, I had a whole PDF of my company, my fake AEC firm that I could just drop right in, 2,000 words. That provides so much context, and I didn't have to type all that. So you would want to have things like your company. You would want it to take some time, grab your beverage of choice and a voice memo app off your phone and record like, "Hey, here's how we do our marketing. Here's the challenges that we're facing in our market. Here's the channels we do and don't use. Here's the things that we're not allowed to do." Right. So maybe you have a prohibition. You're like, "We can't use TikTok. We're just not allowed to." You want to record that, transcribed, because literally every voice memo app has transcription. And then you want to have that block of text. And when you're doing marketing strategy, just pick that block out of your library, drop it right in as a PDF or a text file or whatever, and you're off to the races. Think about how you do your analytics. How does data work in your company? You want to have that pre-recorded and drop it right in. You want to have an ideal customer profile, right? Who is your customer or customers, right? Because if you're a larger AEC firm, you might have an industrial customer, a commercial customer, an education customer, a government and military customer. Who are they? What are their demographics and psychographics and technographics and goals and pain points and needs and motivations and buying process and buying committees and all these things? You can and should be using AI plus your data from your CRM and other systems to build ideal customer profiles. And then once that's in a block of knowledge, all you have to do is say, "Here's my ideal customer profile. Here's a blog post I'm writing. What's my customer going to like about this blog post? What are they not going to like?" And you've taken the time to build this knowledge block so good that you can ask it questions any time of day or night. So some ones you want to have on hand: the about us, how you do your marketing, maybe some finished reports, your ideal customer profile, your strategic plan, and your framework. The fastest way to build these knowledge blocks is with today's deep research tools. You need to pay to count on ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini to do this, but it is the best $20 you will spend a month. And the prompt framework we recommend is called Casino. Context, audience, scope, intent, narrator, and outcome. What is the task? Who's the research for? What's allowed and not allowed? How's the research going to be used? What role does AI play? What are the expected outputs? When you use deep research tools with this prompt structure, you get back absolutely incredible stuff. Let me show you an example just very briefly before we go open up to Q&A. I'm going to go into my deep research, and I use the Casino framework, and I did it for a restaurant just for fun. Let's see if I can find my restaurant here. And all I said was, I need to understand this restaurant's PR strategy. Is this the right one? Yes. Oh no, that's building a PR strategy. That's not what I wanted. Here we are, strategic analysis. This is a restaurant called Ostanya Barikada. It's in Kiev. and I gave it a extensive prompt, right? Following the casino framework. Here's the context, here's the audience, the scope, what sources are allowed, the intent, the narrator, and the outcome. I gave it this long, long prompt. And what does it produce? It produces a virtual X-ray of exactly everything I need to know about this restaurant. It's SWOT analysis against its competitors. It's Porter's five forces to understand the competitive landscape. It's BCG growth matrix to understand its product market fit, a strategic plan, and then a step-by-step work plan. So a deep research tool did that for me. I gave it a very good prompt. I gave it a lot of information, and it was able to go ahead and pull that all together. Another example, let's see if I have it. Do I have it here? Oh, I don't have it in this one. Let's see if I have it in this one. Is yes, here. Someone said, "Hey, I need to know about this podcast. How do I pitch? I want to get my CEO on this podcast. How do I do it?" So we came up with this is the name of the show. Here's the casino framework with all the information that we want, and we get this exhausting analysis of who this podcast is, the show, and who their guests are, how to pitch them, what are the personalities of the hosts, right? And then what are the strategic recommendations for pitching that will get me onto this show? So this is an example of that deep research framework. You can see how quickly you could build knowledge blocks about your company, about your competitors. Boy, wouldn't your biz dev teams love it if for every pitch that they were facing, you come up with a phenomenal X-ray of their competitor, of the competitor or of the prospect, and let them say like, oh, geez, this is what we need to know to pitch this. So we have 18 minutes left. We're going to go open up to questions. I see a couple of questions in the chat already, so I'll answer the first one. Why does AI writing sometimes include a lot of dashes? Because the data it was trained on has a lot of dashes. And the same, by the way, is true of why AI's writing style sometimes isn't great. It's because it trained on us, right? People say, oh, AI writing is kind of bland. Yeah. Have you been to most companies' web pages? We are the flexible, scalable, solution-oriented turnkey. And you're like, yeah, but what do? You go to their mission statement. We leverage synergy to provide shareholder value. Yeah, but what do you do? Right. So when AI does something, it's because it's a mirror of us, of the data it was trained on, the data it learned. And the way to avoid that is to provide it these extensive prompts and extensive details. I was doing some writing earlier, and I used the Casino Deep Research framework to say, go to this company's website and give me their writing style. Build me a writing style guide with all of these characteristics of writing style, tone and diction and spacing and vocabulary, sentence like paragraph length, white space, etc. And he came back with a 30-page guide of how this company's writing style works, so that when I went to go and build their report for them, it nailed their tone because we had all this data that we gathered up. So that answers that question. The question about casino prompts, do they need asterisks? No, they don't. I have that because I use a markup language called Markdown. It is the lingua franca of AI. AI understands it. It understands that things inside those asterisks are bold, with or underlines and things, but you don't have to use it. They can understand the words perfectly fine without them. If you do use a piece of Markdown software, like I use a tool called Joplin, joplinapp.org. It's totally free. It's open source. It uses Markdown as its native format. Um, a person says, I will ask ChatGPT to not continue to do things anymore and have put it in my settings. Yes, you can in all these tools give them what's called system instructions. And system instructions basically say do this all the time or don't do this all the time. It behind the scenes gets injected at the top of every prompt. So if you put some custom instructions in the tool, every time you use that tool, that gets injected, which means you have to maintain it carefully. Because you may get conflicting instructions. You may say, never use passive voice. And then you're working on a piece of text like, I got to use passive voice. You say use passive voice, and then system instructions and your prompt will conflict. And then the AI will just kind of lose its mind. So just be aware of that when you use those things. Is there a way to stop using certain words? You can give it specific instructions, but you should and give it a vocabulary, typically in a specialized file format called JSON, JSON. However, these are probabilistic tools, which means that there is always a non-zero chance they will do something you don't want them to. What I would do though is I would say, here's a prompt, give it a prompt, give it your word list and say, help me write a better prompt that makes sure that this word list of words that we have specified never gets used. One of the things people forget about these tools is they are so smart now. You can literally say, how would you do this? What's the best way for you to do this? Um, a secret, neat little trick is to download the Trust Insights Casino framework, and you say, okay, here, we're going to do this research task. Here's the Trust Insights Casino framework. Ask me one question at a time until you have enough information to build the casino prompt, and then have it spit it out for you. And that's where you'll get incredibly detailed examples. Um, our next question says, our company uses a platform that pulls from our internal database. When we use some of the prompts, I find that the results are limited because of the content it pulls from. What are some prompts you recommend to expand on already existing content or rethink it and make it something new? So this is a problem, particularly with Microsoft Copilot as well. Copilot refers to your internal database first, which is why if your SharePoint is filled with garbage that's 20 years old, it tends to not work so as well as it should. However, what I would do is not necessarily prompt it differently, although you certainly can. I would provide it a lot more context. I would provide examples or sample data or extra data that you're pulling in from outside, because if the results are limited, because it fundamentally probably does not have a huge knowledge base of its own. And it sounds like if it's pulling from your internal content database, it does not have a web search tool that lets it go out on the web. So you have to be the one to go and retrieve the data and bring it back and add it into your prompts as documents you upload into your system. That's probably the best way to get around that particular limitation. Amanda said in the chat, applying the same framework mentality to Joist AI. It's why it's so important to ensure your style guide and voice are set up within the Joist AI settings. And the chat box right in Joist, you can say, here's my thing. And here's a writing style prompt that, tell me what my writing style is, what my voice is, or use a deep research tool on your external website, and then copy and paste that and put it right into Joist so that you get your tone exactly. Sue asks, why do you get a lot of AI responses include web links that are no good? When I click on them, they're not valid links. Yeah, ChatGPT is really bad about that. I can ask AI at the initial prompt to only use valid links, but why do I need to do that? Why is it using outdated ones? Because particularly in ChatGPT, it's called hallucinating. It is pulling the most probable things it has seen from the past, and if there's no web search enabled, or it doesn't have access to the web, or it can't figure out how to parse it that way, it will make things up. Gemini typically is a little bit better than that, and so is Claude. Overall, that would be the recommendation I would have there. Which goes on to the next question: what's the best paid all-inclusive AI software I'd recommend? Today, this answer changes. Today, if I was going to buy just one platform, it would be Google's Gemini. It currently has the smartest models, but it has a lot of add-ons that are useful. So one of the things you can do, and you can do this in ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, is build little custom mini apps. OpenAI calls them GPTs, Google calls them gems, Claude calls them projects. However, as of 5 days from now, Google's going to be allowing access to those gems from the entire Google Workspace suite. So if you're a Google shop, if you're a Google Workspace shop, this dramatically changes the value of Gemini, because you could have something that says like, I'm going to get Rohan's voice in a gem, a little mini app, say, hey, just drop in this document, rewrite this in Rohan's voice. That then becomes available everywhere within the Google Workspace system, which is pretty handy. It also gives you access to Google's VO3 model, which allows you to generate really incredible video. And it also allows you to generate audio as well, and images with Flow and Whisk and a lot of add-ons. So if I had to tell you to spend money on one foundation tool today, it would be Gemini. But that's subject to change. Like I said at the very beginning, though, there's all the tools are competing with each other. So if your favorite tool or the preferred tool or whatever IT's gotten you isn't doing the job for you now, there's a good chance if it's something important, in 3 to 6 months, it will. Can Joist AI build an entire proposal? Yes, that's what it's designed for. Um, Chris is asking, for those interested in understanding prompt engineering at a deeper level, what resources do you recommend? Shameless plug, I have a Mastering Prompt Engineering for Marketers course that has 3 hours of this. So if you're not tired of me by now, you could take that course, because there's 20 different exercises for you to do across multiple categories to learn prompting. Here's the thing, though. If I could give you one tip on prompting besides relevant specific words, it would be to ask the tool to help you improve a prompt. Say like, hey, pretend you're a master prompt engineer. How would you improve this prompt? What is my intent? What was I trying to do here? Can you help me do this better? It's just such a straightforward thing. What was the name of the course again for prompting? It's called Mastering Prompt Engineering for Marketers from TrustInsights.ai. And believe me, I will be more than happy to send you links to it. That was not a problem at all. Other questions? Anyway, we have like 6 minutes left. Comments, dad jokes, barbecue recipes. Okay. So while I'm waiting for any last minute questions, just to give you a quick preview, we got through basically the first little chunk of this. So what's going to be coming up in session 2 is the use cases. So because language models are working language and language is an infinite extensible task, there's an infinite number of use cases, but there are these 7 broad categories of use cases that we're going to cover. We're going to look at AEC specific examples for each of them. Extraction, which is getting data out of data. Classification, which is organize your data. Summarization, which is take big data, make it small. Rewriting, which is take one form of data and turn it into another. Synthesis, which is take small data and make it big. Question answering, which is ask questions of your data. And of course, generation, make new data from your old data. That's what we're going to cover in the next sessions, which is in August. There'll be sign up links and emails, and of course, all the usual things to get at that. Amanda, any final parting words?
Hello, everyone. I'm like mad dashing, responding to everybody's Q&A. So just wanted to take us a moment to thank everybody for attending. I just dropped in the chat the webinar that Chris was talking about. So again, we're going to dive more deep into AEC specific use cases and prompting. So we would love if you would join us. So I dropped that in here. Following, I'm sorry, Chris, what's the bottle of wine for?
So this is Arbivisk. This is from the Bakhmut region in Ukraine. So I am an ardent supporter of the Ukrainian fight to regain their territory. And this is sold at one of our local stores. And a friend and a neighbor are from this region. And so I try it as much as I can to support. For example, this is a commemorative Snake Island 200 hryvnia Ukraine piece of currency.
Thank you. So everybody, there are a few questions that I'll try to also respond to. We're going to send out the slides that Chris had referenced during this, so everybody will get that email following if you attended today. So thank you. If you have any last second questions that you guys want us to let us know, put them in the side there, as well as you're more than welcome to reach out at support@Joist AI, where either myself or our customer success team can reach out to you. So again, encouraging questions. Also want to take a moment to talk about Joist AI in general. The same frameworks that Chris talked about today can be used within the Joist AI framework. Is also is important to setting up your style guides, your voice, and having all of that built within Joist AI. So again, you're using that consistency across your firm, and you're not having to essentially reprompt it every single time. So do keep that in mind. So if that is something your team still needs to set up within the platform, encourage you to do so. Is there any last minute questions that we want to?
There are.
Okay.
So the question about Notebook LM, we're going to cover that in the question answering section in the next session. Is that a Santa chicken rooster behind me? Yes, it is, and it lights up. And do you need to upload the same documents every time you start a new chat? Yes, because models have no memory from session to session. Can you get these prompt frameworks as a PDF? Yes, we'll send you a link. There's actually compilation of all the prompt frameworks in one PDF document that you get. Or if you just want to go to, we'll send you a link to that.
All right, perfect. Well, everybody, wanted to thank you again for taking the time. We're going to do these monthly, so look for those invites coming out, as well as the Joist AI product updates. We send those usually about the first week of the month. So in that invite, you'll see the next 3 to 4 months worth. So you guys are more than welcome to register in advance. Thank you for taking the time. We really appreciate it. And Chris, thank you for joining us today and providing this education. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, everyone. Talk to you on the next one.
All right. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.